So thank you everyone for attending and joining our webcast today. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a specific product. It's AutoCAD MEP, and we're going to take a look at some functionality. Before we get to that, allow me to introduce myself formally. My name is Jay Ayala. I'm a technical specialist for ATG. And we're going to take a look at specifically MEP workflows, specifically with mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and piping. I know that for a lot of the projects that we tend to work on as engineering support on projects, I know that a lot of them tend to come through Revit, and we can use Revit's functionality to do that. However, not all the projects come through from Revit. Sometimes we get architectural backgrounds that are still in AutoCAD. And if that is in fact the case, then I would highly encourage you, if you're in the MEP industry and services, I would highly encourage you to use one of the most underutilized set of features with schedules and tags and property set definitions and parts. So what I'm about to show you today is something that I've been working on since 2004, back during the Autodesk building system days. And it has proven to save me a tremendous amount of time when going to create my documentation. So on our list of agenda today, we're going to look at what the scheduling concept is. We're also going to take a look at property set definitions, which is the heart and soul of how the tags and how the schedules work. Then we'll take a look at creating custom tags as well as custom tables. So as you can see here on screen, I'm working on a particular file here that has the schedules already made. And allow me 1 minute, and we'll get going with this. Okay, so schedules. I do want to inform you that the concept here is rather straightforward. We want to manage our drawings with connected information. Connected information. Okay. So what that means is if there's a change in one place, then that change is global, and it changes not just the information for the tag, but also the schedule, and vice versa, okay? The way this compares to a traditional AutoCAD workflow is interesting. I refer to that as a disconnected workflow. So here's why. In AutoCAD, we'll have to go ahead and update an attributed block, for example, that gives us the tag number, right? And then in Excel, in a separate program altogether, we will have a schedule table. And allow me to bring that up right now. As a matter of fact, we're going to refer to this in just a moment. So then we have to literally copy and paste that Excel schedule into our drawings, right? And then things may or may not match up properly. So what that means is then we have to go and edit the attributed block, or we have to go edit the Excel schedule table. Now, depending on which one of those we're editing, we'll have to bring them back in, or, for example, if we edit the table, we have to delete the table and then go back to Excel, copy and paste it in again, okay? So what we're doing with this concept here of the schedules is we will maximize your proficiency. We will maximize your efficiency of getting your documentation done. All right, so let's get a look at this. Now that I've explained some of that, I'm going through my checklist here of things I wanted to cover. Let's lay out the ground rules for how this feature will work. So the ground rules are pretty simple. It's a 3-tier hierarchy that you have to kind of be aware of when you're working with this, so that you can go ahead and execute on creating this. At the top tier, we have the multi-view part, or the object, okay? We have the object at the top tier. Now that object is smart. It knows a lot about itself. It knows what it is, it knows what it does, and it knows where it goes. When you combine that with a property set definition, and these are custom attributes, so to speak, custom properties that you can add to the properties palette. So you can see the design palette here, and you can see all the properties of these objects that I select, whether it's an XREF, whether it's a table, whether it's an object. you can see the properties in the properties palette and kind of get a good look at as to what that thing is, okay? And then finally, you've got at the bottom level of the tier, the 3-tier hierarchy here, are the tags and the tables. Now those tags and those tables are simply reports of the property set definitions. You'll hear me refer to them as PSDs, that ultimately report one or more of the values that you're after, okay? So let's take a look at the schedule in action, okay? So here what we have on screen is a schedule that I've built. We're gonna go ahead and create this schedule from scratch and show you how to do that for yourself. These pumps, okay, these pumps are multi-view parts. If I select on it, you can see that it is a multi-view part in my properties dialog box, okay? That's important. The next thing that we're gonna look at is the tags. So if I go look at the tag itself, you're gonna see that this is not a multi-view part, rather, this is a multi-view block, okay? Multi-view blocks are what the tags are, okay? And then finally, we're gonna look at the schedules themselves. And this schedule is a schedule table that I've made a style for, specific for this. Now you'll see that I've got the headers, I've got the title on the top, and if I go in and look at this just a little closer, you can see that I've got all that set up properly. And if I turn on my line weights, you'll be able to see that I've got the line weights even, and we're gonna clean this up and make it look more like what you see in the Excel schedule, where I've got the headers with a heavy line weight all the way around the border here. Internal to the main data here, that's a thin line that separates everything else. And I got a heavy line, a heavy border around everything else. So we're gonna dial this in to make it look just like what it looks like in Excel, okay? Going back to our sheet here, this is all interconnected, and the objects themselves, for example, if I go look at this multi-view part, check this out. I can go to the properties palette, but you'll also notice, maybe you haven't noticed this before, there's an extended data tab in the properties palette whenever you select on something in AutoCAD MEP. Well, what's that all about? Well, I'm glad you asked. Here I have a pump completed property set that I've created, and you might think that these properties are familiar because these properties are the exact same properties that you're seeing as columns in the schedule headers over here, okay? So what you do is you make these properties, you make one of them for every one of these headers, and that's how you are able to control it, okay? Now, not only can you do that, but you can make some pretty special things happen when you're working with this. For example, you can make the pump number as an auto incrementing integer, and we're going to get into some of those details in a minute, but this would allow you to use a renumbering capability, okay? We're going to get into all the details here in a moment, but if I go look at my pump object, the mark number, and if this object were to be placed on the 4th floor, okay, then I would start my numbering scheme as 401, as you can see here. And when I hit OK, I'm looking at my command prompt and I can select the order of the pumps, right? So check this out. In the command prompt, it says select object to renumber to 401. So I'll select the far one on the left, that's 401. Notice what happens to the tag as soon as I click on it. Notice what happens to the schedule as soon as I click on it. 1, 2, 3. All right. I look at my command prompt again. It asks me to select object to renumber to 402. 1, 2, 3. And again to 403. You're seeing that all of that is updated not only in my tag as soon as I click on it, but also in the table. Okay, we're going to get to those details here shortly. And additionally, check this out. If I go to copy this one, if I go to copy this particular pump, okay, and I place it out here, you're going to see a couple of things just happened. So not only did it give me an updated tag, check out what it did to my schedule, right? So we're talking about being able to be productive. Now, when I think about that in how I would traditionally do that in AutoCAD, I have to show you the comparison. It's a little bit different. It's a little different, guys. Here's how we do it in regular AutoCAD. So I would begin by inserting my block, right? So here's my insertion capabilities here. And I'll go ahead and find my file. And in this case, I put it on my desktop temporarily. And now that I've got that, I've got my my block available to me, and I can bring that in. Now this object, it's just a block, okay? Now I also have to bring in my tag. My tag has to come in as well. So I'll repeat the process. I'll just go grab the pump mark block. It's an attributed block. And now I'll look for my previews, and this is the one that I want right here. So now I can bring that in, and I can place it at the bottom of my pump here, okay? Now, the edit attribute dialog box pops up, and this is a process cooling water supply, and it's on the 4th floor, so this would be 403, right? Excuse me, 404, rather. And I'll go ahead and type that in there, and oh, but my tag is too small, right? So what size does it need to be? So this tag has been formatted specifically so that it works with my text, my annotation plot size, okay? If I don't know what that is, I can always go look at it by typing units and go to my scale tab, and I can see that my annotation plot size for my company standard here is 3/32 of an inch tall, okay? So I'm currently at 1/4 of an inch. So now I need to know what my text height needs to be. And I can easily calculate that by looking at, first of all, the annotation plot size, which is 3/32 of an inch. And in decimal form, it's 0.09375. And if I take that number and multiply it by my scale factor of 1/4 inch, that's 48, I get to 4.5. That's what my my block has to be scaled at. So I'll go grab that one, and I'll minimize this. And I'll scale it to the right size, 4.5, 4.5. All right, so now that's my standard text height, okay? So there's a little bit of disconnected information here that I have to manage yet again. I have to go to my, oh, before I do that, I need 3 of these, right? So let's go ahead and copy this one over here and over here. But let me renumber these because these are attributed blocks. They're not intelligent. I have to go in and renumber them. So I'll go ahead and do that now. So here we are. And then finally, I have to bring in my Excel file. So, oh, and let me number these properly. This is a process cooling water supply, and this is starting at 404. Okay, and let me drag that down. There we have it, okay? Oh, my format is wrong here. So let me just make that border the right border here. And I'll go to the borders. And more borders, and then I want the thin line on the top and on the bottom of that cell, and that looks right. Okay, now I can grab this all, I can copy it, and in AutoCAD, I'll go ahead and paste that right in here. So there it is, and now I have to scale it properly. So you guys are seeing that there's some minutia, some CAD minutia that I have to manage just to get this to document properly, right? So that's a whole different workflow that I want to avoid having to do every time I have specific pieces of equipment and my company standard schedules. I want to avoid doing that, okay? So what I'm going to teach you is how you can invest a little bit of time up front and what it looks like. The next thing that I'm going to show you is what it looks like to have that readily available to you. All right, so we're gonna get rid of these pumps here and the tags. And if I just get rid of the pump, the tag goes away with it, right? So this little touch here, if I delete just the pump, it takes away the tag that's anchored to it automatically. So this is important because there have been so many times on projects, when I've worked on projects in the past, where a document has gone out and somebody reviewing the document has said, hey, I see that you have a tag here for a diffuser. Where is the diffuser? I don't see where the diffuser is. It's because, again, these things are disconnected. In the example where I had a block and an attributed block to be the tag for that block, those things are not anchored. So if I delete the pump, there's a potential where I could leave that tag behind. With this system, it's all inclusive. If you delete the pump, or whatever object that is, the tag that's associated to it, that's anchored to it, will go away as well. Let me show you how this works in this method. So from the home ribbon, I'm currently in my piping workspace, guys. That's one thing here. And from my home ribbon, I can go to my equipment, and I can see that the category I'm in is multi-view parts, mechanical, and then if I scroll further down, you can see I'm under pumps, and here's my horizontal split case pump, okay? And I'll grab an 8x6, and I'll just place that in my drawing here at a specific orientation. A couple things I want to make note of. This is on a purple equipment pad that you can see in the background here. It's sitting on a purple 4-inch equipment pad. So if I look at it, I can go look at my elevation. I can see that it's sitting on top of the pad at 4 inches rather than on top of the slab at 0 inches, okay? So here I can just add a tag. I've got one created. I'll go ahead and add selected. Now I'm looking at my command prompt, and it tells me to select an object, and I can go place that right there, okay? And what it's doing here, the edit property set data dialog box appears, and it gives me a chance to come in here and mark this as the right prefix and the right number. So here, if this was a process cooling water return, watch what happens to the mark number as I go to the next field. The mark number is, let's say this was on the first floor. Yeah, first floor is fine. 101. I'll go ahead and hit OK. All that information appears readily for me here. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to add my schedule. Okay, so schedule, I can go to my my tag and schedule. Now I can pick any one of these, and it's going to give me the command. It's asking me to select the objects. But before I continue, I'm looking at my properties dialog box here, and I can change this to my company standard pump schedule. Now I can select a big window around everything, and it's going to filter out just the pump objects. So if I had hundreds of objects in here, and I had some diffusers, I had some plumbing fixtures, I had some water heaters, all of those things would filter out and only let me choose and select the pumps. So I'll go ahead and enter that in here, and you can see very quickly that that information is allowing me to schedule that without any additional things that I have to do. It's just already looking at that. Okay, so now that I've got my pump in there, what happens when I go copy these, right? A couple things, and I'll show you how we set this up here in a moment, but I can go and set that next to here and next to here. It automatically incremented from 101 to pump 102 and pump 103, and my schedule has also updated automatically. So there's a huge difference when you're working with this system rather than managing disconnected information, okay? So the next thing that we're gonna look at is how do we make this stuff? How do we do it? All right, one final thing before we move on is I can use my selection tools, and I wanna do this in a 2 viewport configuration so you guys can see what's happening a little more clearly. I'll zoom in real close to what's referred to as the mark number column, okay? Go ahead and zoom in real close. Here's the mark number column. And if I click on the schedule, it gives me some options here. Now in the contextual ribbon, as well as the right click, you're gonna see these options under selection. And here you can add, remove, reselect, or show. The one we're gonna key on here for this presentation is show. So if I show these objects, I can also click on it in the ribbon up at the top of my screen. So if I show this, I'm looking at my command prompt, and it's telling me, select the schedule table item, okay, item, or in parentheses here, it says, or the border for all the items. So if I click on the border, you're gonna see that it selects everything. But if I click on the item, it shows me which one of those 3 is PCWR-101. If I select on 103, it shows me specifically that one, okay? And if I ever just wanted to know which one of these it was, and I'm in a single viewport, there's an option here where you can select just the one item. Let's go to 102, but notice in my command prompt, it says Control Select to zoom. So what's that all about? If I hold Control and I click on 102, it zooms right to where that object is, right? I love this feature because I've been caught in situations where I didn't have the tags placed yet. And, oh, well, which one of those is 101? Which one of those is 102? Which one of those is 103? I don't actually know, right? So that's where that show feature comes in really, really handy. All right, let's move on to our next topic. The next topic that we're going to talk about, guys, is the property set definitions. Now, the property set definitions, these guys are the heart and soul of what is happening with the tagging capabilities and the schedule capabilities. Yeah, if you're not familiar with them, and this is your first time looking at it, I want you to know that I'm going to show you a basic set here. And I'm even going to do some automatic and some formulas. However, you can get really creative with this and make any kind of algebraic formula. And I've used this to calculate head pressure in a simple piping system before using a derivative of Williams formulas. So you can get really complex with this, but I'm going to keep it simple for the purposes of this company's standard schedule, this pump schedule that you see here. And I'm going to talk about some details, obviously, but I'm not going to get completely into it. All right, let's compare what we need. The source of the materials, the source of what we're going to use comes from the schedule, okay? I need you to think of each one of these headers as its own property within a property set definition that we're going to call pump schedule, okay? So each one of these headers belongs to a property set definition, and each one of these is its own independent property. That's how we're going to build this. Now, for example, here, I'm going to take this specific schedule and make one property set for this schedule, but it's going to have all of these columns as their own properties. All right. So that's the foundation of what we're going to do here. And when we establish the property set and the properties that belong in there, every one of these properties is going to be important for the tag and for the table. All right. The property set definitions, once they're created, will be attached in the extended data tab of the properties palette, as you can see here. So earlier we saw the mark number, we saw the location, serves, type, flow. All of these are column headers that were sourced from that particular schedule. And we've converted them, we've created a property set definition using that Excel schedule, and we're about to show you how that works. To create a property set definition, we have to start in the Manage ribbon under the Style and Display panel. You're going to see this Style Manager tool, okay? By leveraging this, you can go to the Documentation Objects, okay? And here you can go to the Property Set Definitions. I've created one. Let me go to the right drawing here, guys. We're going to start over in first floor mech. Here we go. Let's go and add that object. Property set definitions. I'm going to call one pump. Now you can do it a couple ways. Here's the new style button. And if I click new style, you can see it gives me new style here. The other option is to right click on property set definitions and go to new, okay? So here in the new style, I'll start in the general tab and I'll type in pump. And this applies to tab. Starting from the top on down, it's going to apply to an object. Now, the type of object, we have lots of objects that we can create here. I want the multi-view part. So I'll check that. And notice under classifications, there's an option here to expand the node next to multi-view part. And if I go do that, I can see that I can expand into these types of objects, okay? What I want to do is I want to bring in a pump. I'll go ahead and bring in a pump, and I'll just go ahead and place it right here. Excellent. Okay. And let's create our style manager. Now, I didn't notice if when I was looking at that, I noticed that there wasn't. Where's my pump? Okay, no problem. I'll make a new one. All right. I noticed that there wasn't a pump classification. It's because the pump wasn't in there already. So I'll go ahead and apply this to objects, and again, multi-view parts. And here I'll see now that I do have, in fact, have a pump. Go ahead and select the pump. Now the definitions, this is where I'm going to start working through the mark number, the location, serves, and type, okay? I'm gonna start creating those here. Now on the right, I'm gonna show you 3 of these tools. Add manual property, which we're gonna add a bunch of. Here's an automatic property, like things like the elevation or the pipe size, that's an automatic property. And then the formula property, we're gonna key in on 2 of these. So I'm gonna add a manual property. This is gonna be called mark number, okay? Now, when I do that, the description here shows me mark number. The object that it is, this is a piece of text. The default, let's just PCWR-101, okay? The units here, if the format rather, I want that to be case upper. So if I ever type lowercase, it's going to show me uppercase, right? All right, so that's the mark number. Let's do another one. Let's do the next one in the column, which happens to be location, then we'll do serves, then we'll do type. Okay, so location is next. I'm going to capitalize location. And when I do that, the description, notice the description is capitalized as well. This is also type text. And the default here is the location is going to be the pump room. Okay, and case, again, upper. Let's do another manual. This serves which room or which building. This is also a text. This is going to be building. I can't type today. 16. And then let's leave that as, no, let's not leave it as standard. We want that one at case upper as well. And then finally, what was my last one? Serves, and then type, of course, type. So type, capital letters. The description is type. The type is text. Oh, that's confusing. And then the default, we're going to put in here HSCP, horizontal split case pump. All right. And then the type is also upper. So we've got the first 4 in here, and I can go ahead and attach that property set definition directly to the pump, okay? If I select the pump, I can go and look at the add property sets button here. And here's the pump. And I can hit OK. That's the pump that I just made, the pump property set definition. Now, if I go to the extended data tab, you're going to see that I've got the location, the mark number, the serves, and the type. They're not in the order that I want, so I can correct that, okay? So again, let's go to the Manage ribbon, Style Manager, Documentation Objects, Property Set Definition, and the pump. Here we go. So I want the first one to be, and if I expand this, I can see the order here. The first one is going to be mark number. That's the first one. Next is going to be location, so that's number 2 in order. And then serves is number 3, and then type is number 4. Right? So I'll hit apply, okay, and I'll close out. And if I go look at the pump again, it should show me the order that I defined as mark number. Yes, there it is. Mark number is number 1. So I'm going to advise you guys to not make your mark number a piece of text. In order for you to copy things around and automatically have them increment and then using the renumber tool rather than typing things out, you have to be smart about how you do this. So the mark number, I would highly encourage you guys to make a formula. Allow me to show you what I'm talking about here. All right, so let's go and check this one. Here's the formula that we're about to add, okay? So I already have the mark number, but what I need is another manual property. Let's change the default to remove the prefix and the dash and just give me the number, okay? So now what I want is and let's change this one from a piece of text to an auto incrementing integer, okay? The next thing I want to add is I want to add another manual property, and I'm going to call this mark prefix, okay? And this one then becomes number 2. I want that mark prefix rather, that one becomes number 1, excuse me, number 1. Mark number becomes number 2. And this mark prefix is going to be a piece of text. And in here, this might serve, for instance, the process, cooling, and water supply. And finally, I'm going to make a formula, okay? This is going to be called mark number. And I'm going to untick this use formula for description, okay? I'm not going to use the formula for the description. Rather, I'm going to use some VB scripting tools here that allow me to make a calculation. So I'll put a quotation here and an end quotation here. And between that quotation, I can put the mark prefix. And then after, I can put a little dash, or I use a minus button here. And then I can do the mark number. Okay. So the mark number, if the mark number was just PCW, sorry, 101, look at the resulting calculation, right? So I have a mark number and a mark prefix, and it's concatenating both of those together and giving me that information that I need. And here I'll just hit OK. And this one is now going to become number 1, and everything restructures its order sequentially, okay? And for the description, I'm going to make a new description here called mark number, and I want this all capital. Mark no, okay? Excellent, okay, so now that I've got that set up, that's how we make these pieces of information concatenate themselves. And here I'll just put 101, and you can see how the mark number then becomes PCWS 101. Okay, so obviously I would continue down this thread here and make all of these other columns property set definitions. I wanted to show you the mark number in particular as a special case. We're going to not do every one of these for the time saving purposes, but this is how we go about making the property set definitions. That last little key there of making a formula and leveraging how that then concatenates itself. I did want to get into those details because now by doing so, we have the ability to create and additional pumps by using the copy command, and it would automatically increment the digit for you by leveraging that, that format type. So that's how we create property sets. A lot of them are going to be manual, some of them are going to be automatic, and then there will also be ways where you want to do any kind of algebraic formula to have a formula type of property. In my case, I just concatenated a string based off of two things, a prefix, a dash, and a number. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at creating these type of tags, okay? This is not text, this is not line work, this is not a block. This is a multi-view block reference, okay? So how do you make these? Well, let's say that you wanted to make them that were more, instead of that pill shape, that were more like diamond shaped, okay? So here's how we would do this. I would start by acknowledging, look, this is a 3-tier hierarchy. We've got the object. We now have the property set definition defined, and that's the foundation of what you're going to need before you make the tag. And then what we'll do is we have these tags already in our palette, right? So if I go to tag and schedule, we've got all these tags. And you can make custom tags that would be your own company standard tags. And I'm going to show you how we do that here in a moment, okay? We've got the ability to do that from the home ribbon. You can go to the annotation panel. There's a slide out in the title bar there, and there is the create tag tool. We're gonna leverage this one in a moment. In order for us to create the tag, we have to have a foundation of what to work with to begin with. It's not very intuitive when you first start this, but if I were to try to launch that command, it's going to ask me to select the objects. So let's make them. Here's how you make them. You literally use text. So I'm a big fan of the old school dtext from back in 1992. mtext you can use as well. It's just a little more difficult. I'm going to use the mtext here, the text command, and show you what I'm talking about. So here I'll place a text tool. Okay, and I'll just go ahead and place it right here. And I'm going to type the tag the way it looks, PCWR, and I highly recommend that you do this. And I'm going to use the number 303 because it shows me the largest expansion as opposed to 111, right? It's not as expanded as 303, right? So I want to make sure that the numbers expand all the way. And I'll go ahead and end this at this point. Okay, So a couple of things about this that we need to set up. The way this works, I'm going to select it and go to my design properties. I'm going to use my Roman S because that's my standard. That's my standard text style. I'm going to justify this middle center. You'll see why here in a bit. And then I'm going to ensure that my text height, rather than being 9 inches at 1/8 of an inch, I'm going to ensure that my text height is 1 inch tall, okay? And incidentally, notice that the annotative has the symbol of annotative. Roman S does not have the symbol of annotative. I need to make sure that this is 1 inch tall. And the reason for that is that the scaling of how this works requires that your text, when you define a tag, is exactly 1 inch. This is crucial. You'll see why here in a bit. And I think that's all I want to do here with this. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to draw, for instance, the shape around it. I'm going to do some diamond brackets around it with horizontal lines above and below it. So let's start that. And I'll just do from the insertion, I want to make sure that I'm perfectly aligned and everything is symmetrical. There we have it. So I'll just draw a line, a piece of line. I use my ortho here. Here, and then I'll end it there. Okay, perfect. Now I'll mirror, I'll get rid of the miscellaneous line work. I'll mirror this, mirror. I always have trouble with that word. Okay, and mirror this one more time. INS. There we go. And now I'll just close this up with my line work. Now you can make your line work look like anything you want, but just make sure that it's proportional to your text that you're going to have ultimately. And this is where I now start. Now again, this is just, look at this. It's M text and it's a line. That's all it is. All right, so next I want to go to my annotate ribbon and I want to create the tag. So I'll select everything here, okay? And now the define schedule tag dialog box pops up and I want to make sure that I start at the top and work my way across. Okay, now at the bottom here, you're going to see the label. It's got the number in there, but you can change the type, okay? If you double click in there, you can change it to a property. And then you can tell it that the property set you want is the pump that you created early. And the property that specifically that you're looking at is the mark no. Not the mark number, not the mark prefix, the one that's concatenating both of them called a mark no. All right. Now it's asking me for my insertion point, and I'll just type INS to get my snap to recognize the insertion of the text, and I'll click right in the middle. And you've noticed that it automatically scaled itself up, and that's according to the 1/8 inch size scale that I'm at, right? So here is my tag, and at this point, what I might want to do is consider, you know, this tag is, let's see, is it working? So let's add selected, let's tag that pump, and let's put it up on top up here, okay? And PCW, let's change this to process cooling water from supply to return, and let's change this to the 4th floor 401. Okay. Now, if I copy this pump, is it working the way I'm expecting it to work along with the tag? So I'm testing it right now. Okay, and I'll go ahead and end that there. Oh, my tags are interfering. Let me test the scale. Is it scaling at least? Yeah, okay, so it's scaling 401, 402, 403. Everything is working the way I want it to. Perfect, okay. So the next thing that I wanna do is I wanna make sure that I've created my company standard tag. I wanna put this on a palette that I can share with the rest of my colleagues, right? So here's how I do that. I've got this piping palette group that I'm looking at, and these are the palettes that I'm working on. I want to make a new one. All right, so here's how I do that. If I just go look at, right click on my palette group name over here, I can customize the palettes, okay? Allow me to minimize all of the palette groupings except for the one that I'm currently on, and I can tell which one I'm on because it's bold. Let me open that one up. So I got pressure, gravity, fitting, accessories, equipment, annotation, tags and schedules, and here's a custom tag, a custom palette that I've made, okay? So let's make a new palette. I'll right click in the left navigation area here, make a new palette. And I'm going to call this company standard palette. Okay, there it is. Now notice that I made it in the left, but it automatically added itself to the piping grouping. Really what I want is I want this to be in the last stack here, stacked in the last as the last palette, and I can close. Now when I go look at my palettes, you're going to see that I'm currently on my company standard palette, and it's blank. I don't have anything in here. So what I'll start with is I'll click and drag. I'm literally clicking and dragging the pump, and I'm going to put it into my palette. And I can see I've got MV part. And then I can do the same with the palette, sorry, with the tag that I just created. And I can add that here, okay? Now, I want to make sure that these are working properly, so I can test the palette by just launching the command. There's my pump. It looks like that's working okay. And let's go add my pump tag. So I can go add that right here. And it automatically understood that there's 3, and then the next number is number 4. There it is. Okay, so I'm happy and satisfied with how it's working. My palette's working. The next thing I need to do is add a schedule to this. Okay. Stand by, guys. I'm just making sure I covered everything that I had on my notes here. Okay, so one last thing I wanted to cover. I did miss something. When I was at 1/8 of an inch, they were kind of bleeding on each other. One of the key things about a tag that I'd like to show you here is that you've got a yellow location grip that's dependent on the scale. So this is a scale dependent grip that I can just move off over here, okay? And now it's legible, so you can have these things so that you can make sure that they're tagged, but that they're legible, okay? So when I switch to 1/4 of an inch, everything gets restored to where it was. But when I switch back to 1/8 of an inch, it remembers the location of that specific scale. So I like that set of functionality there. And that's working properly. Excellent, okay. Let's move on to the schedule table and how we create the schedule table. Okay, so the goal here, let's review the goal. The goal is to have a schedule table that is really easy to use and it's connected to everything that I'm working with. The way it works is it uses the same property set definition that we've already created. I'm going to create a little bit more property sets to kind of encapsulate the remaining work here. But let's go ahead and work with that now. So to do this, we have to go back to the Style Manager, which again is found in the Manage ribbon. Let's go to the Documentation Objects, and here's the Schedule items, okay? Here's the company standard pump schedule, and I'm going to show you how we make a new one. So just like we did before, I'll create a pump schedule, and then I can double click on the schedule to go look at it. In here, here's the pump from the general, the default format tab. So this default format tab refers to the text information that you're going to find in the main body of the schedule, the stuff that you see highlighted here in Excel. That's the text appearance, the default format, okay? Next, this is important because I have to tell it, oh, my text height is 3/32 of an inch, that's my standard. And the gap is the space above and below the text in the cell, okay? So this applies to, again, multi-view parts, and we're looking for pumps in this case. Oh, you know what? Where are my pumps? There it is. Apply, okay? And I'm going to take this and put it into my other drawing, the first floor mechanical. There it is. And that's the one I'm going to work with moving forward here. So here's my documentation objects, schedule table styles. Here's my pump, okay. Now, next I need to add the columns. I need to add the column for the mark no, not the mark number, not the mark prefix, but the mark no. And then I need to add a column for the prefix, no, sorry, location next. Then add another column for the serves, and then finally the type. Okay, now if I go to sorting and grouping, I want this to sort by the mark no in ascending order, okay? And then the layout, so this table, I'm gonna leave this schedule table as is for now. but I'll come back to this in a moment, okay? So now what I'm going to do is, in my drawing here, I'm going to add the schedule table, okay? And I can start again by selecting any of the schedule tables in the tag and schedule button, and I'll just go make a large window selection here, okay? Perfect. Now, before I complete this, I want to change the style to pump, okay? Now I can select my objects and place my schedule right in place. Okay, so it looks like I've got some things I need to go work on. To make it look like what we have in Excel, there's a few things that we have to format. Let's add the HP, room, volts and phase and control type and this subheader. That's the first thing I'm going to start with. Okay, to do that, I'm going to go to my style manager. And first, I have to make the property set definitions for those items. Okay, so let's add a new one called HP. Let's add a new one called RPM. Let's add a new one called volts phase. Volts phase, okay. And then in the description, I'm going to change that so it has the slash in it, in the description. And then finally, I'm going to add another one for control type. Okay, good. So for the HP, that's going to be a 6 horsepower pump. The RPM is going to be 1600. The volts per phase is going to be 240. And then the control type is going to be, I actually forgot what control type is going to be. VFD, of course. How did I not know that? VFD. I've done this thousands of times. Okay, and then I'm going to go add these property definitions that I just made to the schedule table style, okay? So here's the pump. I'm gonna add a few more columns here, add the column for, now I'm going to select the right one here. I've got a lot of them in my that I can choose from, and the one I want it from is from pump. Okay, here's pump. Now I want the HP, I want the RPM, I want the volts per phase, and then finally I want the control type. Okay. Now to make a subheader for these last 4, I have to go back in and I have to edit the style of the table. So for HP, RPM, volts phase, and then if I scroll over, I'm holding the control button, guys, and I'm selecting all 4 of these. Now you notice that I've got them 4 selected and I can add a header here. That will allow me to add the motor data header that I need here, okay? So that's how we build headers and subheaders and stuff like that. Now I need to take care of the text style that it's using. So again, I'll select the table. I'll edit the style of the table in the contextual ribbon. I'll go to default format and I'll change the style to Roman S. Okay. Now that's starting to look better according to my system here. I'll edit the style again. This time I need to make sure that the schedule table is not saying by default schedule table. I need that to say pump schedule. So in the layout, this table title is controlled here. You can put pump schedule right in here instead of schedule table, okay? So you can see that it's now starting to look more like what I need. The title and the headers need to be bold. The title needs to be twice as large as the regular text, and the headers need to be 1.5 times the regular text height, okay? So let's go change that as well. So here we can edit the style, and in the layout, I can go to the title and I can override the cell format. So it needs to be twice as large, so that's 3/16 of an inch, and it's gonna be Arial bold, okay? And then the column headers is gonna be also Arial bold, and this is gonna be 9/64 of an inch. That's 1.5 times. That's 1.5 times the text height, okay? So now we're getting closer and closer to what we need it to look like. Now, obviously, I didn't add all of the headers, but I would add manual properties and give them some default values, and this would start building itself up. You can edit the cell itself, simply select the item and you can edit the table cell. So maybe one of these was actually serving building 15 rather than the other one. So there's lots of ways where we can manipulate the data. You can also select the pump and say, this one is actually serving building 14. So you can edit it in the cell, you can edit it in the properties, you can edit it anywhere you need. When you see a line that slashes through that, that means that this table is out of date. Select it, you can update the table, and you can see that now 401 serves building 14. So lots of ways to manipulate the data. Before I get off the table schedule here, I'll go to look at the line widths, okay? Now, I wanted to compare that to this because I can see that the main data has thin lines, whereas everything else is thick. All right? So here, what I can do is I can go in and change. You may not be familiar with this. This is the display tab of the properties palette. In here, there's a button called Select Component. And if I hover over that table, it tells me that this is the data minor row lines and that its line weight is by layer. Well, maybe I want this to be 0, okay? So I can affect that directly by selecting that item right here, right? So again, this vertical line, I want that to be set to 0. So I'm selecting the components of the table, and I'm able to manipulate that absolutely, absolutely independently of everything else. And I believe we can add another row, an empty row line here. I thought I saw that in sorting. Oh, I think I have to pick one. Pump number here, group. Yeah, group separation. It's fine. It's fine. No big deal. I thought I could add an empty row on the bottom, but this works just as well. Okay, let me turn off the line weights here. So guys, finally, what I need to do here is take this pump schedule that I've made, okay? Let me save my file here. Take this pump schedule, and I can click and drag this because I know that this is exactly what I need, and I need it on my company standard palette. I can drop this right here. So from now on, guys, from now on, I can start a new drawing very easily, use my objects, okay, bring that in, and I can tag it, right? Tag it, okay, and give it the right number. So let's go and add the right number here in the extended data to, rather than 0, I want 101, okay? And then I can schedule my objects right here. And by setting up the schedule to automatically update and to automatically add new objects and to automatically scan XREFs, I know that you don't always have pumps just on one floor, that you may have them on different XREFs. So you can turn all this on and make sure that you include, for instance, demolished objects. And when you go to start working with your file, right, it starts to build itself. So here we have a way where we've created a company standard schedule, including line weights and textiles and all that stuff, and just we dialed it in. Of course, I'm missing the remaining columns here, guys, but that's a matter of just adding them. We've added company standard tags. We've added them to a palette, and I am now ready to distribute this palette to all my colleagues who are working on this project with me. So guys, that's an underutilized feature of AutoCAD MEP for your AutoCAD projects that you have going on. I would highly encourage you guys to create schedule tables to leverage them in this fashion. I've got so much more that I can get into, guys, but if you guys feel that you need a helping hand here, I am at your disposal, guys. We can put together, I've already got a 4-hour training seminar specifically on this one subject to get you guys going on your company standard schedules. And I typically work hand in hand, side by side, through Zoom with all my clients to help them understand this, this capability and to do this for themselves. So guys, thank you so much for joining me and being part of this with me. It is my pleasure and my privilege to bring this information to you. And I hope that you find this useful and that you can implement this in your day-to-day workflow. Again, my name is Jay Ayala, Technical Specialist for ATG. And I want to thank you on behalf of ATG for joining us.